Howdy there, darling. I'm the Librarian, and this is the book return. Let me tell you the story of a lonely teenage girl. She was rejected by her peers and took comfort in books. One day, she was walking through a bookstore, and there, on the new release shelf, was a book simply titled Twilight. Curious, the girl picked up the book and read the line she'll remember until the day she dies. There were 3 things Bella knew for certain. 1, Edward was a vampire. 2, some part of him thirsted for her blood. And 3, she was unconditionally and irrevocably in love with him. That lonely girl put the book back on the shelf and bought a Batman novel instead. Twilight is the story of a girl named Bella who falls in love with a vampire named Edward. Eddie instinctually wants to kill Bella and doesn't even trust himself around her. But he does control himself long enough for them to strike up a friendship. Bella learns to accept Edward for who and what he is, and they start to fall in love. But oh no, the sacred jewel is stolen! Bella fires an arrow, hitting the creature, but she also hits the jewel, shattering it, raining jewel shards everywhere. Now Bella and Edward must journey across feudal Japan, finding the pieces and... Feudal Japan? Wait, that's the plot of Inuyasha. Huh, weird. Wonder how I got there. Anyway... Another demonic creature wants to eat Bella, and Edward must defend her. Just when all hope seems lost, Edward unlocks the power of the Tetsaiga and uses it to... That's Inuyasha. Moving on. Things still don't go smoothly for the young lovers. They soon become separated, and Bella is whisked away by a werewolf named Koga who wants to use her powers to... Why do I keep going back to Inuyasha? Hold it. Teenage girl falls for demonic boy... Boy protects girl from evil. There's a wolf who tries to separate them. Oh, good grief, they're the same plot! The plot. Inuyasha's plot has a MacGuffin. What's a MacGuffin? Well, it's just something, let's say a magic jewel, for all of our characters to fight over, but the plot isn't actually about. Let's take Inuyasha, for example. In Inuyasha, it's the sacred jewel. It's a magic gem that increases the power of demons. Inuyasha wants this jewel for himself. Kagome broke it in the first place, so she has to protect it. The 2 of them have to work together in order to gather the pieces of the jewel, and romance ensues. Twilight has nothing like this. The audience has nothing but their investment in Bella to continue the story, and if you don't find Bella interesting, you have no reason to watch. But it's about the love story, you say. It's Romeo and Juliet, you say. How? The Cullens like Bella, and it's not like Bella's father forbids them from seeing each other. So you're not star-crossed lovers. Oh, I'm supposed to be impressed that you're a vampire? That's not forbidden love, that's taboo. That wouldn't be Romeo and Juliet, that would be Othello. Oh, you haven't heard of Othello? I'll explain. Othello and Desdemona were in love. The problem is that Othello was a black guy, and this is before interracial marriages were cool. So the 2 elope, and Othello becomes an officer. Things look good! Then Iago shows up. Iago hates Othello, but he pretends to be his best friend. He plants evidence and convinces Othello that his wife is cheating on him, and in a fit of rage, he kills her and then himself. Now these days, an interracial romance isn't that much of an issue, but an interspecies relationship would turn some heads. Much like Othello, Edward hates himself for who and what he is, and he doesn't believe that he is worthy of the woman that he loves. Eventually, he would be consumed with self-doubt that would extend to Bella's love for him, making him suspicious and jealous of other men, until he finally loses it and eats her. So how does a vampire win the heart of a moody teenage girl? Let's take a look. He creepily stares at her from across the lunchroom. He recoils from her in bio class. They make awkward small talk about the rain. They win a prize in bio class. He saves her from being flattened. He climbs into her room to watch her sleep. He's rude. Apologizes for being rude. Then he's rude again. He makes vague threats like, if you were smart, you'd stay away from me. While he is against them falling in love, he climbs into her room to watch her sleep and follows her on girls' night. He saves her from being gang raped. If not a little suspicious, like maybe this was planned. He's
frustrated that he can't read her mind. He tells her that he's killed in the past. He now wants to kill her. And he doesn't know if he can stop from killing her. Wow, Bella, how could you ever resist such charms? Let's compare this with the love plot in Inuyasha. Inuyasha initially wanted to kill Kagome because he mistook her to be Kikyo, the woman he thought had betrayed him and left him to die. Inuyasha and Kagome are forced to spend time together in order to reconstruct the sacred jewel. They're both stupid, immature teenagers at the beginning of the series. We see them grow up as they grow into their responsibilities, and their love grow at the same time. At no point do they just lay around in meadows.
Kagome versus Bella. Bella likes to think that she has some kind of tortured soul, but in reality, she's just a normal teenage girl. On the other hand, Kagome likes to think that she's a normal teenage girl, but she actually has a tortured soul, complete with dying tragically in a past life. Everyone says that Bella is really special, but she never contributes anything. All the drama in the series relates to various creatures trying to kill her, and she never takes any action. She's just the mortal caught up in the immortal's battle. Now yes, Kagome has plenty of useless moments herself, but she's a priestess. She's responsible for the magic jewel. She can sense it wherever it is, and that can help tremendously in the chaos of battle. In fact, when the gang does go up against Naraku in the end, it's Kagome who strikes the fatal blow. The climax of Twilight is Bella going mano a mano against James in an attempt to save her mother's life. The film goes out of its way to establish that this is very brave, and, to be fair, it is. It's also incredibly moronic. Even in this confrontation, Bella somehow remains a passive character. Now, I'm not saying that Bella shouldn't be resigned to die in this situation, but she doesn't even attempt to survive. The girl can do a Google search to figure out what a vampire is, but she can't do one to figure out a vampire repellent? Your grand plan to survive a vampire is pepper spray? Sheesh, honey, at least grab some garlic fries on your way there. Hobbies. Kagome takes great pride in her schoolwork. She enjoys spending time with friends, is a nature lover, and she loves taking long, leisurely baths. What about Bella? She's an avid reader. Okay, of what? Seriously, poetry, fiction, nonfiction? What universes does she immerse herself in? What characters does she connect with? A common complaint against these films is that Bella is too alien to the audience. A few well-placed novels would go a long way towards flushing her out. Married young. Both Bella and Kagome get married right out of high school. Now with Bella, this bothers me, but I'm actually okay with Kagome. See, at the end of Inuyasha's run, Kagome ends up trapped in her own world for 3 years. She has 3 years to decide who she is, 3 years completely on her own to decide what she really wants out of life, and she chooses to go back to Inuyasha. I can respect this choice. She's had time to think. Bella and Edward were only separated once, and they nearly killed themselves. Inuyasha versus Edward. While both initially want to kill their love interests, with Edward, this is out of bloodlust. With Inuyasha, it's because he mistook Kagome for Kikyo, the woman he thought had betrayed him and left him to die. While both are over 100 years old, Inuyasha acts like a 15-year-old boy, which puts him more on par with Kagome. Edward acts like an older man. Let me rephrase that. Meyer tries to make Edward act like an older man. Which just begs the question, why in the world Edward even wants a high school girl? Personalities. Inuyasha has a cold exterior but a heart of gold. He's fiercely loyal to his friends, a cat lover, and the role of being a man is critical to him. Edward, you know what? I'll come back to that when I think of something. Inuyasha is a half-demon, half-human, not truly belonging in either world. It's an obvious racism parallel and the struggle to define oneself with mixed ancestry. Now, we tend not to think about it that much in my native US of A since it's so commonplace, but it's a very important theme when you remember that this is Japan, which has a long history of cultural isolationism. And what themes does Edward represent? Pass! There's an attempt at a racism theme, what with the wolves and the vampires, but the humans are a nice mixture of ethnicities, especially for a small town, so it falls flat. The third wheel, Koga versus Jacob. Now, Koga isn't really interested in Kagome as a person. He's more in love with the idea of Kagome. He likes the idea of his marrying a priestess. He likes the idea of the power she could bring to the tribe. Jacob does actually love Bella. Hell if I know why, but he does. Jacob is a more well-rounded character than Edward. For example, he likes to fix up old engines, whereas Edward's hobbies are... I still got nothing. Despite being a more well-rounded character and a more supportive one, Bella still chooses Edward. I really feel bad for Jake. You know, he's just hanging in there hoping for a Sense and Sensibility ending, but Meyer doesn't have half the talent of Austin, so poor Jake is screwed.
The brothers, Jasper versus Shishomaru. Inuyasha and Shishomaru's relationship is based off of the Crown Prince and Jin from the Tale of Jin. Their father loved Inuyasha's mother greatly, and when he died, he left his most powerful weapon, the Tetsaiga, to his then-infant son, Inuyasha, knowing that Inuyasha would not be as respected by other demons as Shishomaru was. Both brothers are fiercely jealous of each other, Shishomaru of Inuyasha's inheritance, and Inuyasha of a childhood with their father. Shishomaru starts out the story a plain-dealing villain and becomes one of the heroes. Initially, Shishomaru cares nothing for humans, and even less for his half-human brother. Then Shishomaru meets the orphaned human girl, Rin. The two forge a close bond, and Shishomaru unofficially adopts her. It's his love for her that changes Shishomaru's character, as he sees just how much his father could love Inuyasha. Jasper and Edward's relationship... Wait, do they even share dialogue? The Gothic novel structure. Twilight is structured like a classic romantic Gothic novel. Now, this isn't a bad idea, but we have to ask if it works. Now, here I'm going to have to put Inuyasha aside, because even though it has some of these elements, it's not a romantic Gothic novel, and I have no idea how much Japanese children are taught about British literature, or how much, if at all, these stories affected her. But Meyer is a good old American. She has no excuse for not looking at a genre before she writes in it. So, let's see how Twilight measures up. Dracula is obvious. Jane Eyre is the epoch of romantic Gothic, and let's look at the granddaddy of them all, Frankenstein. Number 1, the protagonist must suffer a tragedy early in the story. Victor Frankenstein loses his mother. Jane Eyre grows up alone and unloved. Jonathan Harker has his nightmarish trip to Transylvania, and Bella Swan moves to a small town where everyone goes out of their way to be nice to her. Number 2, the tragedy must fuel the protagonist for the rest of the story. Victor wants to cheat death. Jane wants to define a safe place within society. Jonathan wants to protect Mina, and Edward is rude. Number 3, the setting. The setting should be dark and forbidding. There should be something warning the protagonist of danger. Jonathan goes to Dracula's creepy castle. Frankenstein digs up bodies from a cemetery. A part of the house is off limits to Jane, and in Twilight is set in the small town of Forks. Number 4, the environment. The environment should be bleak, lots of rain, thunder, and lightning. The old tree symbolizes that the lovers will be ripped apart. Every time there's a storm in Frankenstein, something bad's about to happen. Most of Jonathan's journey to Transylvania is at night, symbolizing that he's come to a dark place. And in Twilight, well, it rains a lot. Symbolism? Number 5, the protagonist suspects or learns that there is more than what they are told. Frankenstein learns the secrets of life. Jane learns the secret of the attic. Jonathan learns he's up against an ancient monster, and Twilight? Much like Dracula, a lot of time is spent building up to the reveal that Edward and Count Dracula are vampires. In Dracula, Jonathan's trip to Transylvania is a slow journey into darkness. Jonathan is a modern man of his day, not prone to superstition or even overtly religious. At first, Jonathan writes everything off as just the quirks of the locals. By the time that Jonathan learns something is really wrong, it's too late. Bella is completely safe in Forks, surrounded by friends and family. Bella learning that Edward is a vampire doesn't even change the way they feel about each other. So the entire mystery, that the whole line is solved before Bella, doesn't change anything. Number 6, the protagonist gets what they want for a moment, but then suffers another tragedy. Victor's creation turns on him. Jane finds love, but it's not as it seems. Jonathan gets the girl, but Dracula corrupts her. And in Twilight,
They play baseball and are interrupted by the vampire equivalent of jocks. Number 7, an aura of decay surrounds the protagonist and they lose things that are important to them. Victor's family suffers for his sins. All of Jane's friends and family die. Lucy and Mina are slowly corrupted by Dracula. And in Twilight, well, her parents are divorced. Is that supposed to count? Number 8, the story should address ancient themes. Society, racism, etc. Frankenstein is about society corrupting an innocent. Jane Eyre is about classism. Dracula is about not writing off the ways of the past. Inuyasha has a clear racism message, and Twilight ignores the literary subtext of vampires. Ever since Carmilla, the first vampire in written fiction, vampires have been closely linked with sexual taboos. Promiscuity, rape, infidelity, etc. Even Interview with a Vampire and Blade had these themes. But in Twilight, there are no sexual taboos at all. Now, seeing that the main audience for these films is 12-year-old girls, I should say that's a good thing, but it's just lazy. Number 9, the protagonist faces social scorn. Victor's creature is spurned by all who meet him. Jonathan never tells his journey to anyone for fear that they won't believe him, and Jane refuses to believe that she can be loved. And the kids at school stare at Bella and Edward. Number 10, the protagonist faces an evil force. Victor's creature wants revenge against the father who abandoned him. Jonathan faces against an ancient evil darkness. Naraku's actions are linked with his obsession with Kikyo. These antagonists are fascinating to watch. And in Twilight, we have James, who likes the thrill of the hunt. Number 11, the protagonist takes action in the face of life-threatening danger. Frankenstein takes action when the monster threatens his family. Mina nearly dies. Jane's resolve keeps her alive in the wilderness. And in Twilight, Edward saves Bella's life. Wait, who's the protagonist? So there you have it. Inuyasha is more in-depth and more dramatic. While both are about the characters, Inuyasha's characters are well thought out, and there's a structure to keep the audience invested. Inuyasha does the supernatural romance a heck of a lot better than Twilight. It's well-paced, and has a much broader appeal. Twilight is every tired cliche from every sappy romance novel ever written. There's no commentary, no satire, no wit. It just exists.
Sparkly vampires, glittering werewolves, effervescent zombies, monsters that shine. Sparkly vampires don't want us to be lonely.
Your stupid minds! Stupid! Stupid!